Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Delve. Today we continue to work on our card/colony survival hybrid game called Hand of Life. Now last time we began working on our colonist AI, specifically the gathering portion. It was a lot of work and we managed to get it done, but it left us with a dilemma. A dilemma we'll solve today. That's right, we're picking things up right where we left off by trying to figure out how to pass necessary resource information on. We'll also take a look at some gameplay balancing and start work on the camera controls. And before we begin, for this episode, we're mixing things up a bit. Today I'll be listing 3 major things I learned while recording this session, and you'll see why in a bit. So let's not waste any more time and get to the coding. The first lesson I learned this session was to have some confidence in myself. Going into this session, I expected to spend the entire time trying to figure this one issue out. And as a quick recap, here's our current issue. Our colonists can harvest to their heart's content, but once they bring those resources back to the shrine, we needed to pass on the information of what the colonist is actually carrying. I wasn't sure how to approach this, though I did have some ideas. Try chaining variables, maybe use an array. Sadly, none of those ideas would work, so I had to rethink my game plan. And it eventually all came back to our good old friend, the data grid. So first, I created the data grid that would help keep track of all the resources we gather. I then created a very simple script to add resources to the grid. When a colonist turns in resources, we check for the ID of the resource and simply add what the colonist is carrying to the corresponding ID in the data grid. And just like that, my current biggest issue was solved. Now, if you're curious why I didn't simply give the colonists their own data lists, I was afraid it would become an optimization issue with too many colonists existing at once. Going with this route definitely has its drawbacks, but I think we can turn those negatives into positives in due time. So with the issue I thought would take all session actually only taking up about a third of that time, I decided to just keep going. I wasn't sure what to work on next exactly, so I just kept working on resources. So it was time to add some new resources and move on to lesson number 2, balancing. I created a new resource, stone. I wanted to not only see the data grid work with multiple entries, but also start figuring out how to balance resource gathering. While we've already got a weight variable, the harvest cooldown time and health of the resources would need to be tweaked, so that the amount of time it takes to cut a log, for example, is relative to, say, chipping small rocks out of a boulder. So with the data for the stone resource added, I started tweaking, and a lot of this was simply changing a number, hitting test, seeing the result, and repeating the process. My main goal here was just to get an idea of how the gathering resources would be experienced. How long should colonists be chopping a tree before they return with wood? How long should the colonists be hitting a boulder before it's gone? And just how many resources should be given versus how much can be carried at once? Currently, I'm not looking to get complicated with resources. For example, wood is wood and won't need to be turned into smaller wood to craft tools. In the end, messing around with the numbers gave me a better idea of what to look forward to in the future, but we needed to complete more of the game before we could really start getting serious about balancing. So I moved on to something else I've been waiting to tackle, and that's the camera control. And here we begin lesson 3. I still don't fully understand GameMaker's new camera system. Things started pretty simple. Instead of having the camera follow the player character, it was going to exist independently in the world and would be controlled via keyboard. Nothing fancy to start off with, I just wanted the camera to move, and so far everything worked fine. So I decided to add a new element to the HUD to help us keep track of the resources. For now, I wanted to be able to hover over a resource and have the HUD display the name of the resource and how many we already have in stock. So using GameMaker's collision system, I passed on the resource's ID that would then take that info from a master list and display that on the HUD. So far, things were working flawlessly. I was about to call it a day when suddenly my HUD broke. That's right, interacting with the HUD would send it off screen. After a ton of review and testing, I was able to boil it down to the card selection causing the issue. The problem is, at no point is the HUD position ever touched other than on its creation and to keep it glued to the camera object. At no point does the card selection code itself reference the HUD's position. But as it turns out, indeed, this was due to not understanding GameMaker's camera code. Basically, I had the camera sit to the center of the screen, but GameMaker doesn't know how to handle cameras that go beyond the current room size. So instead, it simply ignores that space until it actually matters. So moving the camera closer to the middle of the room, for example, that meant that the ignored space now mattered to GameMaker. And so, for whatever reason, interacting with the cards gives GameMaker a wake-up call to update the camera's position. And so it stops ignoring that space, causing the entire HUD to shift in the process. So in order to fix this, I had to tie the camera to the absolute top left of the screen. And mind you, this is only relative to the screen's space. In short, GameMaker's camera system is confusing, and I still don't understand what triggers this, but I've got it fixed and hopefully I've learned something from this experience. And so there we have it, 3 lessons learned thanks to some unexpected success and ending with some bizarre unexpected behaviors. Coding in a nutshell, folks. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Let's Dev. So remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on our progress in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.